Recording. Right. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be able to be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. To view remotely from a computer, use the link below to join the public meeting. From a telephone, use the number in the agenda. If you've not registered with Zoom, blah, 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 that's all fine. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. All right. Is there any public comment? I don't see any member of the public on, let alone somebody that wants to comment. So we'll move along. New
Tony,
business.
hold.
Yep.
I'm switching computers.
Okay.
Okay, there. Um, yeah, my other one kept disconnecting. Uh, what was my? Oh, I just wanted to make sure you saw Chris Menard asked if we would come before FinCom.
Sure.
Did you see that email? Okay.
Yeah, it's fine with me. Might be tough with my schedule, but that's fine. Um, did he say when he wanted it to be done? Before or
December.
after? Oh,
December.
in December? Perfect. That's fine.
I think
Perfect.
he's. Yeah, I don't think they're meeting in November because he's traveling most of the month.
Uh, For whatever reason, in like one day, my entire month of November got packed. So if it's
Yeah.
December, I can think about it. But if it's before then, no. Um, all right. So the next thing on the agenda is the assessors and new growth. So whoever wants to go first, you're welcome to start.
Okay.
I will say I put a copy of the slides, the handouts, on the budget task force drive. So if anybody needs to access them, they're accessible on there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Izzy. Yeah, Linda's going to take the reins on this conversation, I think.
Okay. Alrighty. Hello everyone. I'm Linda McQuaid. I'm the assessor. And the first slide is we were approved, the LE4, which is our classification report. And I did put together, I don't know if you all have that. This just kind of shows our current assessed values for residential, commercial class, industrial, and personal property. We have a total of 2.3 billion, 360,000, 2.3 billion, 706,780. Our exempt properties are 104,823,600. We have a total, including personal property, of 5,321 parcels. I did put together the second slide is a chart which indicates the percentage in Lunenburg for the real and personal property values. 92% of the town is residential, 4% is commercial, 1% is industrial. Sorry for those of you who can't see it. Does everybody have a copy of this? The slides?
I'm downloading it now.
Oh, okay. I'll give you a minute.
It won't let me preview for some reason.
So
okay.
The two things we wanted to talk about, and Linda's going to lead that conversation. One of them is about the split tax rate and what the implications would be for commercial versus residential folks. We are using some estimated numbers for next year. We do know what the growth is. We know what the total tax levy is. There are some other things that aren't finalized yet, as you know. And the other thing we'll be talking about, she'll be talking about briefly, is the residential exemption and how that might or might apply for Lunenburg. So those are the really two things. I know the budget task force was empowered to try to figure out new sources of revenue. Neither of these is a new source of revenue. It redistributes how the taxes are collected, though, from whom. So it is not like a new source of revenue. I just want to caution everybody not this, this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Thank you. Sorry. Now that I've interrupted Linda.
Well, thank you for, I was actually going to get to that, but I will actually touch base on that further on in the presentation. So as you can see, the pie chart has the breakdown of the percentages. Residential being 92%, commercial being 4%, industrial 1%, and 3% is personal property. There were a couple of, like Brian mentioned, suggestions, I guess, to help shift some of this tax burden to the commercial and industrial and personal property. And one of the items mentioned was the residential exemption. That's the third slide. And I put together a description of what that is. Basically, it's applied to every residential property, which is the principal residence of a taxpayer. The exemption shifts the tax burden within the residential class from owners of moderately valued residential homes and residential properties not occupied by the owner, including apartments and vacant lands. Adoption of this residential exemption increases the residential tax rate. This higher tax rate creates a shift within the class that reduces the taxes paid by homeowners with moderately valued properties. Shift of these taxes is then paid by owners of rental properties, vacation homes, and higher valued homes. This typically exists in residential communities with larger cities or towns with many non-owner occupied properties with apartment buildings such as Boston, Cambridge, Brookline, Somerville, just to name a few. It also exists in resort communities with seasonal residents, typically down the Cape in Massachusetts, Barnstable, Nantucket, Provincetown, and Wellfleet. Now, Concord, I guess, had instituted this last year, and it has not been very successful. They are thinking about, doing away with that. The select board may adopt a discount of up to 35% of the average residential valuation. So that was one solution that, or I don't even know if I want to call it a solution, just to shift some of this burden off of the residential.
So Linda,
yeah,
I'm trying to, am I reading this right? So the exemption applies to people who own properties but don't live there, the apartments, vacant lands.
Yes.
And it applies it to homeowners who live in their homes.
Yes.
It shifts the burden over to them.
It does. You can actually do it one or two ways. You can have a certain set amount, like say if you did, I don't know.
I just wanted to clarify. I think Renee said it the opposite way.
I don't know if I'm doing it backwards or
I think you
right
did.
way.
And Linda
okay.
may have heard it. The exemption would be for owner-occupied residences. So they could reduce their tax.
Makes more sense.
The vast majority of our homes in the community are owner-occupied residences. So it would take that tax burden that is reduced and distribute it to those folks who own either multi-unit, what do they call it?
Apartment buildings.
Yeah.
And and also vacation homes as well.
And vacation
so second homes.
Okay, right. That makes more sense.
And also it would, if you have a much higher valued home, there is some of that gets moved over to the higher valued homes too. I don't know if there's a cutoff, Linda. Is it 1 million or some other number?
Well, it actually, it can be decided upon a certain amount of what that cutoff would be, where it would be a moderately priced home and up to, over a certain amount. And then it could be shifted there. The only issue is that you start to have a shift in, the higher homes versus the lower. So it kind of breaks apart the town if you keep it within the moderately versus the higher price. And we already have issues with that, people that have higher ended homes that are questioning values and all that. So.
And you sort of start to pit one group against another when you do that. So it's just,
Yeah,
you can't come up with a number for what the implications of that are, but it just people start to resent the fact that I'm paying a higher tax rate because my house is a little more expensive than this other house down the street. So there is that concern as you do it. I'm sorry to interrupt again.
Oh, no worries. Are there any other questions on the residential exemption? It does, I mean, just based on the information that's provided, it doesn't seem like it would be a fit for Lunenburg.
mhm. I don't know that it's ever been proposed before, actually. Has it?
No, it's never been adopted.
Yeah.
Lunenburg.
So can somebody just explain why has it never been proposed before?
Well,
Because the typical town that would be taking advantage of this is not Lunenburg. It's a town that has a much higher percentage of non-owner occupied residences, um, be they rentals because you're on the seashore. That's why you hear a lot about Linda mentioned some of the folks down at the Cape or on the islands. There are a lot of rental units, so it would make sense for those communities to try to take advantage of it. Um, the amount of applicable folks that we could, I'll say, take the increase that could take the increases is actually fairly small in our community.
Mhm.
In other words, there's not enough non-rental, non-vacation properties to make it worthwhile.
Not enough.
Non-owner occupied, yeah.
right.
Occupied. Our percentage of owner occupied is much higher than most of those other communities. I would say all of them, but I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah.
It
And
would
it's also
put,
like for Boston area, Cambridge, Brookline, Somerville that have high rental as far as with apartment
Mhm.
buildings. It's ideal for the larger cities.
those are basically income properties.
Yes.
In many cases,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And they can absorb a lot of the increase on the
Mhm.
taxes.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
by the way, Tony, that was a really good question.
I just want to make sure that we're not leaving anything on the table.
Right.
One of the things that we found in the process of doing this is that there's so many things that just exist in the town finances that like why are we doing it this way? What is this thing? Like pretty basic questions that we don't have answers to. And so, also I don't know a lot, so I have to ask a lot of questions.
Well, moving on to the split tax rate, and that I had a question about that when I first got on the assessors. Why don't we do this? It's going to save us. It's not going to save us. But go ahead, Linda.
So I put together the last slide is the impact of the tax rate shift. And we did this based on an estimated tax rate of what we kind of determined from the levy limit. Again, it's just an estimate. We don't have any of the numbers yet. It's just something to kind of base it on. Is he still working on those numbers? So until we have the levy limit, it's very difficult to have it be accurate. But again, we estimated, and as you go through the chart, again, I gave all the breakdown of the assessed values and the percentage of the residential and then the CIP. The estimated levy, we just put in 31,602,108 based on that, and this all came from the Department of Revenue options table. It gave a single tax rate of 1339 per thousand. The table that's to the right, I have the levy amounts kind of broken down just so you could kind of see that based on that total levy limit. And then when a town decides to introduce a shift in the tax rate to the CIP, and the shift, we have, when there's no shift, it's just 1.0 for a residential factor. And then I did a 10% shift to our max, which is 1.5. So I included in the share percentages, it's like a breakdown. And as you can see, based on the CIP shift and the residential factor, there's the share percentage that kind of shifts from the residential to the CIP. and then it changes the tax rate based on what the residential would be, and then the CIP. As you increase the residential or the CIP shift, you can see that, you know, the numbers becomes a bigger gap, with the max being $12.77 for residential and $20.08 for commercial, industrial, personal property. So again, this is just estimate. When we have the numbers, we'll be able to predict that.
Linda?
Yeah.
Sorry, before you go on, the table to the right, the levy amounts based on estimated levy, what's, so that is that also with the shifts? Or how is that?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I probably should have broken that down there. It is with the shifts. Yeah.
Okay. So it's basically just another way of displaying
the way the
okay.
levy. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So as you can see, it does shift within those. And I did kind of separate it just so you could see what it does to the commercial, industrial, and personal property. See that as well. So further down, you can kind of see with the single tax rate what happens. Now, based on the assessed values, we've determined that the average single family assessed value is $504,937. The average commercial, industrial, and personal property value is 430. Well, I should say commercial and industrial is 435,910. The personal property would be sharing rate, so that's why I included that. But that average commercial industrial rate is 435,910. So if you apply the shift, and we did no shift for the single family, you'd see that the average tax bill would be $6,761.06. And as you increase and shift it to the CIP, it goes down just a little bit, 6,634, and then the max at 1.50, it reduces it to $6,448.05. So it only decreases the bill by $126.19 for the 1.20 shift.
That's annual. That's 1 year.
That's annual. Yeah. So it's not a huge savings. And if you do the max, it's a $313 decline. And if you look at the commercial rate, it really increases it quite a bit to the commercial and industrial properties, and even the personal property. The bill goes up quite a bit. It increases it by $1,100 annually for a 1.20 shift, and then the max would be, you know, $2,900. So it does not benefit the commercial at all. If anything, it causes their bill to go up dramatically. With only having 8%, with the town being mostly residential, it really isn't recommended. And the DOR typically uses a standard if you don't have more than 10%. It just doesn't make sense to shift it to the commercial.
Is the thinking that the large increase for the businesses is not worth the small decrease for the taxpayers?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you some questions. If I'm a person who is on a fixed income and I own my house and my rate goes up, what options do I have to find that new money?
What do you mean your rate?
Yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
None, right? I mean, the answer is you have none. You're stuck. But if you're a
If-
business, you
If
can.
your tax bill goes up, is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to clear.
But if you're a business, you can increase your cost to your customers. You can do things more efficiently. You have a lot more inputs that you can control to increase your ability to pay the taxes. And so
Well-
even if it's a marginal savings for the individual taxpayers, it would be a way of increasing the revenue for the town without pricing people out of their homes.
You didn't increase the revenue for the town. Let's start there. The
Well, I mean,
revenue
like
stays the same.
it's not it is an increase because we're taxing more,
Nope.
right?
Well, the two and
Nope.
a half, the normal.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's a
The levy
it's
increases
half
year
of
to
the
year.
growth in tax rate.
We're going to assume that we are always going to do the tax increase at 5%.
Yeah.
And plus new growth. So the tax levy is the tax levy. You haven't increased the amount of revenue coming into town by $1.
No, right.
Okay.
You've increased it by the 2.5%. So you're getting more money because the 2.5%, right?
From the previous year, there's an
Right,
increase.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that two
Well,
and
what
a
I'm saying
half
is if the
is happening
2.5%
anyway.
is
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
if the 2.5% is borne by a business, they have more ways of generating that revenue to meet that increase than a private taxpayer.
Yes. May I
Sure.
add something to that? So if you are running a business and you are not stuck in a location, you can then move your business to a different town that does not have a split tax rate.
Yep.
And it may be as much as moving a quarter of a mile down the street. So virtually none of our local communities, that's not quite true, but almost true, have a split tax rate. We can point to a few that do. They are remnants of historical stuff that happened in those communities. It's the town of Maynard, Massachusetts, has a split tax rate. Of course,
that's how this came up, Brian.
Of course,
Yeah.
they had the headquarters for Digital Equipment Corporation in their community as they were splitting their tax rates way back when. And no one is going to say, okay, let's remerge those tax rates. So they are currently saddled with, I'll say, I won't even use, yeah, that's the word I wanted to use, with the split tax rate, and that no one, if they want to keep their job in town government, is going to suggest merging those tax rates. So there are other communities, we have a couple other communities that are similar to that, where they have historical stuff that caused them to split their tax rate that may no longer exist. So for us to move to a split tax rate, we'd have to be looking at our businesses in town, our commercial businesses especially, and any small industries that we have, and say, you don't mind paying another 50% on your tax bill, do you? And in many cases, they'll just pay it, but there'll be places where there'll be people who will say, I don't need to be headquartering my business in this community, so they'll move out. Now, we can't point to specifics because until we try to do that, I don't know what we'd use. But having said that, we run the risk of moving some portion of our commercial business out of the community. What that does is increases everybody else's taxes. So any short-term savings that may have occurred because we changed the tax, we split the tax rate, could be offset by, or in some cases would be offset by some amount of lost commercial/industrial value.
So just to play devil's advocate, because that's fun. So Maynard has managed to grow their businesses while maintaining that split tax rate.
Grow their businesses. If you go back to when they had Digital Equipment Corporation, they aren't grown.
No, but since Digital left, because I used to live there.
Yes, no, I know, and you're absolutely right. They have, because they have a lot of industrial and commercial infrastructure that they could take advantage of. So that's a big piece. We don't have that much in Lunenburg. And maybe if we did something along the Summer Street corridor or Chase Road, we'd have a more attractive business environment. Today, we don't have a really attractive business environment, and I'm suggesting that we don't want to make it any less attractive.
So I'm curious, because this was the question we had, the commercial industrial, so the average value is 400 something thousand. what does it look like in terms of the spread for small business versus larger, what does that histogram kind of look like? Like the whole spectrum of commercial industrial businesses in town.
We probably have a list of all the commercial industrial businesses in town. I think we could probably pull that together. I don't have that in front of me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just because there's no way to say to put more of the burden on a larger company than a small business, right? When you do a split rate, it's applied across the board.
Yep.
Yeah, it would.
And it applies to farms too.
It would apply to our chapter land because we classify that as commercial property. So it would apply to the chapter land.
Chapter lands are already significantly have a significant savings because we value them really low.
Okay.
Okay.
But I mean, I can give you these.
Linda, correct me if I'm wrong there, by the way. I just did that off the top of my head, but the chapter, because we have chapter lands, they are significantly less taxed already. So I don't think that there would be, if we were to split the tax rate, their taxes would go up, but they wouldn't go up nearly as much as if they had taken them out of chapter.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. But it would affect the current commercial. We have like 97 million in commercial. I'll just give you this. Maybe this will help. So 97 million in assessed value for commercial, and industrial is 32 million. So the bulk of it, is more commercial than industrial. We did. Well, go ahead.
But the commercial includes, small business all the way up to Walmart.
All the way up to the solar farm, all the way up to this. There's lots of other commercial endeavors that are fairly large. We have a quarry down the south part of town here.
Right.
So there are some other. It's not just Walmart. There's lots of other. But I would think that we could probably name the 10 that are big, and everything else is small.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much a binary kind of.
Yeah. We can look at the data though, and I'm sorry, right. Tony.
So the quarry can't move.
No, it can't move.
Walmart's not moving.
Stuck here. Yeah. They could close, but I don't think they will.
Right. But what I'm getting at is if a lot of the companies who would be hit by this can't move, then the fear that you have that they would vacate Lunenburg can't be founded.
So my point was we have a finite number of really large businesses that couldn't move. We have a much larger number of smaller businesses that might, or that might not open up in town because we have a split tax rate and they don't want to have, they can get the same non-split tax rate a quarter of a mile down the street.
What would if we're looking at the commercial industrial rate, what are the big 10 worth out of that? Are they in the 95% of that money?
We have that data. We don't have it in front of us, so we can pull that.
But like if the big 10 are 95% of that number, who cares?
Well, I don't know. Renee?
Unless you own a business in the lower end. Like what if you're smokestack roasters?
Also, can't they apply for abatements just like regular people? Residential properties?
Yes, they can. Of the commercial number, I'll just give you the 300, which is our land use code. We have 126 properties, and that represents 88,960,200. So it's not just the big Walmart and the Leominster Shirley Road property that represents. That consists of small mom and pop businesses as well.
We could actually get you the data though, so that's a absolutely reasonable request. We probably should know that off the top of our heads.
I'm just trying to think, like, I would not want a small business to go out. I mean, I own my own business and I like being employed on my own. So I would not want to do that to anybody. But if Walmart and Hannaford could pay a little more, I don't have any problem taxing those people. You know, we obviously don't get to make that decision, but if Hannaford and Walmart, you know, paid more taxes, they're not going to move. Like they can't reasonably move. I mean, they could if they wanted to, but I don't think they're going to move over an increase in their tax bill of $3,000 or you know,
Well, that
$2,000.
that's average. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it
But
ain't
like as a
$3,000 for them.
percentage, I think it's probably still worth it for them to stay.
It's a 50% increase in their taxes, whatever
But
their taxes.
that's only if you do the full shift.
Yes,
If you do like a 1.1 or 1.15, 1.2 in that lower
Yep.
end of the shift.
yep. And that might save a residential homeowner $100.
Yeah.
Well, it
it's
depends
kind
on the assessed value. It would save
No, I
me
know,
more.
but I'm just averages out because
Yeah.
that's what we're using.
Well,
And
yeah.
yeah,
It's not a huge saving, like, oh, if you go to the 1.10, the residential tax rate would be 13.26 and the CIP tax rate would be $14.73. So it does go up dramatically for the commercial, industrial, and personal property.
I just don't think that like I understand what you guys are saying, and you have a different focus than the budget task force does. And so like I get why you're saying what you're saying, but if we can shift any of the tax burden onto large mega national, multinational corporations, like guess what? I don't really have any problem with that. You know, like if Elon Musk had a plant in Lunenburg, I'd want him to pay a lot of taxes too. Same with Sam Walton. Like
our
I don't
commercial
think
values be
that's
much higher too. So recognize that. Our
right.
commercial values be higher, meaning more than 10%. Right now, we're only at 8%, 8.2%. So the commercial industrial is really a small portion of our overall bill. You're quite right, though. There are some large companies that could absorb it without a hiccup. No problem. I get
Couldn't
that.
the small companies just apply for an abatement?
No, well, they
Why
could
not?
make an abatement, but their value is based upon. Go ahead, Linda. How do you
Yeah,
value
that,
commercial?
well, the problem is you can't just give it to the larger. It's going to affect all the businesses in that class, commercial, industrial, personal property. We can give them an abatement if they qualify, but they may not qualify based on the value and based on our sales. So that's the issue. When they apply for an abatement, we would of course reference the sales that are utilized to determine those values.
There are there are three different ways to qualify to evaluate a commercial business, I think, if I recall
Yes.
correctly. And if they were to file for an abatement, we would use the valuation process that we have. And in many cases, they would probably not qualify for an abatement, especially those smaller businesses.
Yeah.
Who sets the rules for abatements?
I'm not sure I
But
understand the question. We have guidelines from the state on what the abatements are, and then we have the values done by a third party because they can objectively come in and give us a value for those commercial properties.
Like who sets the rules about what you need to do to qualify for an abatement? Is that set by the state government or local government?
Anybody can file for an abatement.
yeah.
Right, but like when you're saying you qualify for it, who determines those qualifications?
And I probably used the wrong word there,
Okay.
but anybody can apply for an abatement. Once we've looked at the situation for how you valued your place, how our consultants valued your place of business. In many cases, we would probably not reduce the value of the building or the industry or the whatever it is, solar farm, whatever it is.
So if you have it assessed by this neutral third party and it comes back as value X, you have no discretion
We do.
in awarding them. It's done?
No, we haven't, we
We
can
do.
review what they've done. And in
Yeah.
fact, we do.
No, but let's say that there's no problem with their value assessment. You get the value as X, you have
Well-
no discretion in awarding the abatement or not.
So your abatement is based upon your value.
Yeah.
The only thing that we can abate you for is for your value. So if your value is still the same, we don't abate you anything. Per the state.
Okay, so I guess I'm not asking the correct question. Who sets the qualifications for how you go about determining whether or not someone gets an abatement? Is it a formula based on something applied, created by the state as a law or a regulation? Is it something that you guys work with the third party to generate? Is it something that you do internally? In other words,
There are different types of abatements. You have veterans, elderly. I think Linda can speak with others, but there are different types of abatements that they can apply for, and if their values are assessed, they could do like a reassessment as well. But there are different types of abatements depending on Mass General law.
Yeah, the
Well-
ones you just mentioned as they were are
Yeah,
exemptions,
Yeah.
rather than abatements, but they have the same effect. The
Sorry,
bottom
sorry,
line
yeah.
is the applicant would have to convince the Board of Assessors that their value of their property was misstated.
what about exemptions? Who determines what qualifies as an exemption?
Exemption is determined by state guidelines.
Okay, so you guys have no discretion in awarding exemptions
Not really.
and
Nope.
no ability to give an abatement if you deem that the value is assessed correctly.
Correct.
Okay.
I did also want to mention that when they do file an abatement, we do an exterior and interior inspection as part of that process and verify all the data. If it's residential, we look at sales, we analyze that. Commercial, we look at whatever approach is used, whether it's cost approach. We can also reference sales as well for local businesses that may have sold. So there's a lot of work that goes into that as well.
And we have had some we have had some commercial abatements that we've said, yep, you're right. This was abated, this was valued improperly, and we'll fix it. So we have had some of that. It's not very frequent, but it happens.
What percentage of the requests for abatement are granted?
We can't, I don't really have those numbers. It would vary.
Dropping out the 20 lakes here, okay? If we drop those, take them out of the conversation. I believe that we had like 42 applicants last year. I think we approved something in excess of 30, 35, somewhere in that range. So yes, if they can make a valid case that their property is valued improperly, we will make an adjustment to their value, which then leads to the abatement. But having said that, we have over 5,000 properties in town. We did 40.
Right. How many of the businesses that are in like the top 10 would qualify for some kind of exemption versus how many not in the top 10 would qualify for an exemption?
The businesses really don't have exemptions at all.
So like no veteran owned, nothing like that. It's only abatements.
We've only had abatements. If anybody applied for a veteran owned business, would that be an exemption? I'm not aware of it, but it may be. Linda may know.
Yeah. Do you want me to, I think when I'm to get my briefcase, I might have the abatements with me if you want any more details.
He's doing more of a what if, I think.
Yeah. Here's what I want to do. I want to figure out a way to impose the split tax rate only on multinational corporations that do business in Lunenburg and figure out a way to give an exemption or abatement to everybody that's a small business.
I don't believe there's a vehicle for that.
No.
Having said that, we'll look at it.
How close
Yeah.
can we get?
I don't think we get close at all on that. I don't think we have much latitude. If your commercial endeavor has a value, there's not much we can do beyond that because the state mandate is that we base taxes on value, be it residential or commercial or industrial.
If anybody ever wants to know why the rich get richer and the poor stay poor, this is exactly why. Because if we have no way of taxing big companies at a different rate than we tax the guy that is, hung up his shingle and has one employee, then this is crazy. Like this is just absolutely crazy.
Well, think about what his value, though, of his business isn't going to be as large. So, he's not going to be paying a huge amount. And by the way, if we then raise his tax rate by 50%, we hit him again harder. I get what you're saying. I don't know how we would approach it.
Well, you would drive the businesses out of town. That's the problem.
There is a risk of that, but I can't put any numbers on that.
But if we can only tax the big companies, they wouldn't leave. Like Walmart's not leaving. They picked that location after years of research on real estate. Same
Well,
with Hannaford's. These aren't like,
they put a super Walmart down the street in Leominster.
sure.
We're probably not going to drive them out with a 50% tax rate, tax increase. But I don't want to make it easy for them to make the decision to just close.
I did want to mention Leominster does not have a split tax rate also.
Leominster has a fixed tax rate, yep.
Do you know their percentage of commercial and their?
I
gotta think it's higher, a lot higher
Yeah.
than ours.
It
But I
is.
thought Westford would be higher than they said. Westford was single too. I was
Yeah,
surprised.
Right.
Yeah.
There are very few communities that have adopted it that don't have a significant commercial industrial base.
I know air is a little over 70%. I think, well, I was there prior. I think it was 72% residential and 28 commercial. So
In air, really?
And I'm trying, I think the tax rate when I left was 1242 for residential and 2745 for CA.
Whoa.
So as you can see,
That's a huge shift.
It is.
But they're also 27. They're also
more
almost 7 times more than us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So we'll pull up some more information to figure out how many of the commercial and industrial businesses are in the top 10. We'll pick a number. Top 10 is a good number for me, since we are looking at a significant number of much smaller businesses. But
yeah, there's just
sorry.
To use a term I heard, it's a peanut butter, right, approach. It's for all of them. There's no way to weight it or have a graduated hit.
It's almost like the system is rigged to favor big businesses by scaring little businesses into thinking that they're going to be hit by the same tax rate. It's almost like it's rigged. I think it is rigged. Just so we're on the record. I don't think anybody on this meeting or this call rigged it, but this is asinine to me that we cannot tax Walmart more than we do. They're the largest, most profitable company in the history of humanity. They have GDP that's larger than the state of Michigan. They would be the 13th most profitable state on an annual basis, and we can't figure out a way to tax them. That is a failure.
It's a flaw in the system.
Yes.
For sure.
Oh, I think it's designed. But
oh, it's not a flaw. They did that.
It's an intentional flaw.
And I don't understand why we as taxpayers can't fight back and say, you know what? We're changing this.
All you have to do is get the state to change the tax laws.
Yeah.
You did, you did notice the sarcasm there.
Oh, I know. I just feel terrible because, like, You know, we're scrimping and saving, trying to get money for people to educate our children. And we have a company that generates more money than the entire state of Michigan on an annual basis. And we're like, I'm really worried we might raise their taxes. Who cares? Who cares? Like, raise their taxes.
It's not them that we're worried about.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Because they have convinced us that this tax rate issue is about small businesses, and it's not. If we could figure out a lawful way that got past their lobbyists on Beacon Hill and in Washington to tax them at a higher, fairer rate, then we wouldn't have to worry about, like you could have an exemption for people that, whose businesses employ less than 5 people or something like that. Walmart employs 2.7 million people. It would be like, it's bigger than New Mexico in terms of the number of employees, and we can't tax them. Like, that's crazy. And I know you guys have heard this, but like, if the conclusion is the split tax rate doesn't work because it will hurt small businesses, then that's what we have to do. But it is absolutely asinine and completely unfair. We are making rich people richer, and this is why. This is an intentional thing. It is insane. I don't want to donate money to Walmart. I want Walmart to donate money to my kids' teachers. There is no way to split up the big companies from the little companies. I just don't think it's worth it. That's my opinion.
Right.
But if there is a way to split up the big companies from the little companies, then I would have not a single scintilla of hesitation in recommending that we do the split tax rate and impose it all on Walmart.
Well, as Arlo Guthrie said, I think we should start a movement.
Yeah.
Because it makes sense. I'm not sure who we can get to listen. We'll start to pull up the data that tells us what the largest commercial and industrial businesses are here in town, how much they're worth, how much they pay in taxes. And we can then figure out if there's a next step.
This is the only point in this entire budget task force process where we have not had to go to the Thomas Sowell quote about there are no solutions, only trade-offs. There is a solution here. This is an easy problem to fix. It is just the fact that the money won't let us fix it. Right? Like, this is not like if we had some way to tax just Walmart, I think everybody in town would vote for doing that. Like, it's just crazy. This is a place where there is a solution, and we are not willing to do it for reasons that are beyond me. I'm sorry to make this a rant, but it's really frustrating.
While you said not willing, I don't think we are allowed to at this point.
And we live in a democracy, so we can change the laws.
Right.
We're not willing.
We as a people. Yep.
Yes.
Without affecting the small mom and pop shop,
Yep.
small businesses, unfortunately.
So we'll pull up that data. Is there something else we can get for you?
A list of exemptions might be helpful to see if there are any business exemptions at all, if they could apply.
I'm aware of, but Linda can confirm that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Linda, did I do my math right based on your estimated numbers? If we did just a 1.1 shift, the difference between the commercial, industrial, and the residential tax rate would be $1.47. Is that right? So I took
Yes.
1473.
Okay.
Yeah.
1473 minus 1326.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. 147. That's what I came up with.
For every 1,000, so
Per 1,000. Yep.
Per 1,000. So do you want me to tell you what that would be for the commercial? Are you looking
1470 for what's the average? 435.
435, 910. So it'd be 435, 910 times 0.01473, $6,420.95.
Right.
6,000. I'm sorry,
$420
420. Okay.
and 95 cents.
And
Annual.
we'd be reducing the residential tax rate by 13 cents.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think, the numbers that Evan was looking at, I can't remember what he calculated the shift, but he came up with numbers that would shift basically the override off of the resident onto the commercial industrial. There was, I thought it was a pretty low shift, but I don't know what he was using. Maybe he was using the 1410,
Yeah,
tax rate from last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when the numbers are in Gateway and Izzy's all set with them, I should probably have a better idea of what the tax rate will be. But right now we just kind of did an estimate down based on the levy limit in Gateway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we don't really have the debt exclusion in there, and so it's kind of difficult to come up with all those numbers until we have all the information in there for the levy. That's the problem. So
Is that a big drop from, we were at 1410, now you're estimating? I mean, I know it's estimate, but 1339.
yeah, it is. Again, this was just based on just an estimate, and
Yeah.
we just tried to kind of do it from Gateway. But again, we don't have all the numbers, so I probably should have done this based on the 1410. If you want, I can figure that out. We can kind of do it based on that.
I think that's what Evan based his off of.
Okay, well,
Yeah, because he wouldn't have known about the 1339 at all.
Right, right.
Do you want me to
You-
figure
and-
that out? I can do it if you want.
I think we have it in one of our meeting folders somewhere.
Okay.
I think Evan shared it with us. Do you remember, Tony? Did Evan share his presentation on Maynard? He did a calculation of a shift that equated to basically taking the burden of the override off the residents. It was, in the 900,000 area that then got put on the commercial industrial. I can look for it. I think we have it somewhere. Yeah, it's unfortunate that we can't spread the burden within the CIP group according to size, not just the assessed value, because the assessed value doesn't take into account, does it? The profit of the company, of the business. It's just property.
So
Go ahead,
commercial is valued three different ways, potentially. I think one of them is total sales. I don't recall what the other two are.
cost and income, and then their personal property is also valued. So it's the building, the real estate, plus the personal property.
Right. The methodology for valuing commercial. There were three different methods, I think.
Yeah, typically cost and income.
Right.
Cost meaning their overhead?
The cost approach is used, and those are costs that are determined. We have a vision appraisal that determines what those would be, and some are also valued on in income, what their expenses and all that would be.
That's another
I
way to
see
go at
Cambridge-
this, Tony, is our commercial property being assessed to account for things like Walmart, this mega corporation versus, someone who owns a coffee shop.
I mean, when you assess the value, why can't you include in the value the for lack of a better term, the brand value of the corporation? I mean, like if you're Walmart, you have a certain, brand loyalty footprint, whatever you want to say, that greatly exceeds Smokehouse Coffee, and yet they're getting taxed at the same rate. So is there a local way to change the criteria for valuation that would allow us to target big businesses?
Well, I do know there's a commercial exemption, but I don't have the information on that. That is something that maybe we could investigate.
I looked at that. The commercial exemption applies for um, machinery used on the property to deliver stuff directly to consumers. I was looking it up when you guys were talking. But I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, do we have any way of tweaking these assessed value things to make it to account for the value of it being a big giant company?
A business that's traded on the New York Stock Exchange versus someone who's, delivering pizzas.
Well, the assessed value would obviously be higher for Walmart, much higher than the smaller type business.
I would hope so.
Right,
So
but
I mean,
the way that McDonald's functions is McDonald's is a company that owns real estate. And the reason why people want to buy a franchise and rent the property that McDonald's owns is because people want to be part of the McDonald's company. They want that franchise identity. It has value. I don't know if our assessors have a way of accounting for that special kind of value that's associated with being part of a large business. Whereas, like Smokestack, which is delicious coffee. I don't drink coffee, but my mother tells me it's delicious. Like they don't have the same advantages. And so like having them use the same property, like the same a property in the same town, it doesn't equate. And I just want to know if there's like some way to tweak how we assess value to make it really encompass what it is to be part of a multinational corporation that happens to have a business here in Lunenburg. Can we change the way that the assessments are done?
The assessment process is basically mandated by the state.
Okay.
So again, if we want to make a change, we'll have to go back to the state and try to get some laws changed around how the values are created. Doesn't mean there's not some judgment in there. There obviously is, but for the most part, it's a cut and dry. Here's how you get there. Figure out what your total sales were or what your profit was, and there's a percentage of that we're going to tax, essentially.
and if I had access to our camera system, I could tell you what the tax bill is. I just don't have that right now. That's something we could get back to. But like Brian said, the top line.
In real terms, Walmart is clearly paying a lot more than Smokestack by leaps and bounds, but the rate that they're charged is the same.
Mm-hmm. But they could also absorb more if the rate were to go up.
Yes, to a point.
But we have no way of selectively
Wait.
that rate.
Brian, let's figure out what the point is. Because my guess is the point is a lot higher, like billions of dollars higher. I mean, like, I find the way in which we do this to be deplorable.
Well, it's billions for the company, but if you were to, and I'm not saying we could ever possibly do this, but if you were to overtax Walmart by, 5 times what they're getting taxed today, they may relook at whether they need to be in Lunenburg any longer, or if they can just get away with having a store in Leominster.
Yeah.
So you run the risk at some point of potentially driving companies out. Not that Walmart is ever going to be crying poverty. but they make decisions based upon the financial picture.
Mm.
So they moved into town. They knew we had a fixed tax rate. We knew we didn't have a split tax rate. They had a common tax rate. They knew that at the time. That was may have been one of the factors, may not have been, because they also had to evaluate traffic flow and all that other stuff that they have to do when they're opening up a new building or a new store. But at some point, some of their stores they close because they're no longer profitable for a variety of reasons. I would hate to have them close, and now we all have to absorb additional
revenue
burden because because the value of their property went down. And it isn't really going to happen for Walmart, but it might happen for some smaller companies who would move out of town. So our taxable value may go from 97 million to 90 million. Well, it's only $7 million. Yeah, it's $7 million, but we all then have to absorb the taxes on that $7 million across everybody. So it is a risk that you run as you start to split the tax rate and drive it up. And Renee's right. In the case of Maynard, they are still growing, even though they have a split tax rate. So they're still growing their commercial stuff. So what's the point? I don't know what the point is yet. But we can at least start collecting some data.
Yeah. The only thing I could think of with Maynard is given the communities they're surrounded by, it still may be more attractive than opening a business in Concord or Acton.
A good point. Excellent point.
I mean, they're surrounded by different communities than we are.
Right.
And they're inside of 495. They're close to public,
Virtually none of our abutting communities have a split tax rate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that
except Air.
Air does. And Fitchburg does as well. I know that. Yeah. I know Leominster does not.
And who's doing better financially? Thought I'd mention that.
Well, Air, you just said has 27%.
Walmart. They're always doing better financially. Let's be clear.
No. But which community is doing better financially? Fitchburg or Leominster? It's easy.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell anybody because we all know.
Yeah.
And Leominster has the single tax rate and Fitchburg has a split tax rate. Not that that's the cause.
Yeah.
Not that that's the cause. I want to be
clear.
It's just if I have all these things that line up and they make things better, then great. But if we have reasons why people are moving to Leominster and not to Fitchburg, one of them may be taxes. And school system and, all that other stuff. We can get some data on the commercial and industrial properties. And as I said, we can give you the top 10 and how much that's valued at as a percentage of the total value of our commercial and industrial properties. That's, I think, fairly easy, right, Linda?
Yes. Yep. We can get a list.
And we'll send it off to you. We can come back and meet with you at some point if you'd like, or you could just take the data and figure out what we should do with it.
Is there a way to get a list of, because I had the tax cheat sheet for mass.gov stuff. There are exemptions for businesses. It depends on what kind of business are. Is there any way to get us like that, what we just asked for, and then like a list of exemptions for businesses? I'd just be much more inclined to do the split tax rate if we could put it at the feet of people who make $648 billion a year annually and grow at a 6.3% even through the worst inflation we've seen in 40 years. So like I hear what you're saying, but maybe we should either do that or have Arlo Guthrie do the assessments of the small businesses and Scrooge McDuck do the assessments of Walmart.
Okay. Anything else we can do for you today?
No, thank you.
Okay.
We'll get back to you with that information.
Thanks for tolerating ranty behavior.
No,
No
you know what?
problem.
You have every right. We are scrimping. We are watching our pennies, and there are a whole bunch of people out there that don't have to. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
All right,
Thank you, Brian.
thanks. Have a
Thank you,
good night.
Linda.
Have a good
Okay.
night.
It was nice to meet
Thanks.
all of you.
Nice
Or
to
some
meet
of you. Already met some of you. Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
That was depressing. That was the most depressing. It's just like
Why do I feel like every one of these meetings is depressing? So
this was the most
yay.
depressing because like in the other meetings you're like you feel like King Solomon where you're dividing somebody's baby and you're like, what is the right way to do this? In this one, it's like, I just want to let you know the tax code is made for rich people and rich businesses, and the rest of you poor schlubs have to bear the cost. Like, come on. We got to have a different way to do this. The next item on the agenda is the review of the special town meeting presentation. We went through that and I edited it in real time last time. I don't think I don't know. Do you guys want to include anything from the split tax rate? Because like it just sounds like we're doomed, right? Like there's no way that split tax rate is gonna work.
I mean, it's something, we said we would, turn over every stone, everything would be put on the table. Looked
Happy
at
to
it.
put it
I
on the
don't think it's
table,
gonna
but
work. Yeah,
I want to know what the exemptions are so that we could, I don't know.
they're not gonna be enough.
Do you remember the scene in Incredibles where Bob tells the little old lady how to figure out the maze to get through the bureaucracy? I feel like we need
No.
somebody to do that for all the small businesses so they can claim these exemptions. But it's so frustrating. So do you want to include the assessor stuff about the split tax rate or not?
It's probably not worth including because I don't think there's anything we can do with it.
Yeah, I don't think.
It's to
Yeah,
include it just to say we looked at it.
We considered this, and it's unfortunately not enough to make a difference. We run the risk of driving out small companies that are, you know, essential for the identity of the community while never really getting any real money out of multinational corporations that benefit from a incredibly sympathetic tax rate.
I think if you mention a split tax and a single tax, a lot of people won't know what you're talking about.
Carter, you had some good input last time. Is there any way to do this in a way that's succinct?
There really isn't. It gets messy, and yeah, I can't think of anything off the him. My apologies for being late. I was trying
No,
to
no,
sit
Renee
in on
told
the
us.
capital planning committee a little bit earlier.
Renee told us. Do you think it's even worth mentioning then if we can't get into the details? Just say that we've considered revamping how tax burdens are spread across the town and then leave it at that?
I think it's worth mentioning only in case someone says, well, did you think about? I mean, Izzy, I, the other members of the staff try to think of the questions we're going to get asked so we can be ahead of them.
You know, one of the things that I remember when we were doing the budget stuff for the school last year, we got a lot of really helpful, very smart people commenting on like, here's my accounting experience, here's what I would want to know, and that kind of stuff. And one of the things that like struck me as so demoralizing was to basically tell them like your private corporation accounting experience is lovely, but the rules for municipal accounting are so radically different that they're really, apples and oranges. And we're really grateful that you're willing to help and willing to look over all this data, but like, if you've never done municipal accounting, it's almost worse than having no knowledge, because if you have no knowledge, you know you don't know. And if you're doing private accounting, you come into municipal accounting, you might assume things one way and get them wrong. But like, I don't know how to explain the tax code thing, the split tax rate thing, especially because it doesn't sound like, are we even gonna make that proposal? I mean, we have right now, item 9, review viability of a split tax rate. And we can just leave that in there as a place to point people to say, like, we've considered this, but we're not committing to doing it either way. And then we wait to see what the assessor says.
And we'll have the classification hearing at the select board on the 19th. Is that right?
Yes, that's what it was advertised
So,
for.
Okay.
And we've asked Linda to prepare a couple different shifts in the tax rate and to show how that would impact 3 typical homes and some typical commercials, so you can get a sense of the dollar shift that would happen on these properties. I think that will prove illuminating to you. May I ask a question that's going to be like nothing I don't think we've talked about at all just yet?
Yeah, sure.
Renee, the Stormwater Task Force, and I know this will be a pox on my house to some for asking, but have you looked at a stormwater district at all to establish that as an alternate revenue base?
a stormwater district. We're looking at a stormwater utility.
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
That is.
Okay. Yeah, we started looking at it. We haven't met in a couple months. But yeah, a stormwater utility has been brought up. It was brought up a few years ago, didn't get any traction, and now we started looking at it, kind of revived it again with CEI.
Okay.
So that is the hope was to have something for annual town meeting. But there's a lot of education and PR that has to precede that.
Oh, indeed. I just wasn't sure if you'd looked at it at all.
Yeah, we just started. Yeah, it just started to this summer, but
okay.
Nothing that's ready.
Is there anything that just because I drive through Townsend every day, we're like 100% certain we don't want the community, the CPA money. I mean, it's an issue that they're looking at. And I know we've gone over it a couple of times. And Carter, you seemed pretty convinced that it was not worth it. And at the time, I didn't know you from Joe, but now I have a lot of faith in what you tell us.
Well, I guess what I was trying to get across was that it's not going to give you a source of money for your operating budget. It will give you some money towards capital needs, whether it's development of parks, repair of, the Ritter building, repair of the town hall, buildings that are historic. But I'm seeing the real challenge here as being the operating budget, Tony.
Okay.
And it will increase the taxes.
Yes.
Of everyone. The reimbursement is lower than it was in the beginning. And there are rules and restrictions on what you can use that money to fund, right?
Yes, there are. You have to spend a certain amount on recreation, a certain amount on historic preservation, and a certain amount on your affordable housing initiatives.
But if we're going to have to spend this money anyway, and it's all coming out of the same pot, ultimately, why wouldn't we put in for the money? Like, we're going to redo the Ritter building. That seems clear, and that would be covered. There's a proposal that I don't know whether it's actually going to be on the floor at special town meeting for the parks. So if we're going to spend that money anyway, why not go and get, matching funds plus to do that?
I mean, we could get just some real world numbers on that. I think that's something that the finance committee and that would, you need a real united front on that. That would need to have the select board, FinCom, capital planning committee, school committee, conservation commission. I mean, you would really need to have a united front amongst all of those interested parties. Land trusts, if you have one in town, affordable housing advocates, and figure about a 1 year to an 18-month lead time of educating the public to get it in front of them for a vote.
Renee, what do you think the likelihood of that is getting through select board?
I don't know. Without seeing numbers, I mean, if I remember right, it's a 1.5% increase in property tax.
It can be up to 3, and you can exempt the first 100,000 of residential properties. So it's a surcharge. It's a 1% to 3% surcharge. And you can exempt 100,000 on the residential properties.
And is there a time commitment? You commit to so many years?
I'd have to go back and look. I haven't looked
Yeah.
at it in detail, but I'm happy to get you an answer within a week.
I mean, I hear you, Tony. If we're going to be, paying for some version of Marshall Park, I don't even know. The municipal building, I don't know about the low income housing, but at least we know there's a parks project and there's, municipal building, the historical building projects. That is one way. I think it would take a closer look at the real numbers to see if we're going to be paying anyway, is that one way to help fund those projects? I don't know.
It would take
We don't
us
even know how much those projects are yet.
Yeah, it would take us 1 to 2 weeks to even give you a first cut sense of what it would look like.
I mean, we can always put that in as one of the things that we looked at. I mean, is the Townsend claim that the proponents in Townsend say is that they're getting like 6% back on their it can be no more than 3%, so they're at least doubling their money. And if we have these projects on online, then why not take that? I mean, Carter, you weren't here when the school was doing its budget, but there were like things like markers for fourth grade. And we were like cutting markers for fourth grade. So like it was like $1,000 we were fighting over. If we're getting 6% return on a 3% tax, that's a great deal.
Well, you'll get about a 60% return at this time.
Okay.
Okay, because when it first started out, you were getting about 100 cents for every 100 cents you were raising. Most recently, or more recently, I should say, you're getting about 60 cents for every 100 cents you're raising locally. That's still not
that money anyway, right?
That's still not a bad return.
Yeah.
And this money, can go to, there are historic churches, there are Grange Halls, there are the Audubon Society all across the state that can get grants out of this program from the local CPA program. So it's not just the town of Moulton Borough itself, historical societies. You can spread this money out across elements of the community beyond the town of Moulton Borough as a corporate body politic.
Do you use it for schools? Like if let's just say, for example, instead of tearing down Turkey Hill, we were going to renovate it. Would this qualify for CPA money?
Only if it was a historic building. However,
Peter Beardmore went there. It should be historic.
However, let us say that you had at some point in your community's future a decision to abandon Turkey Hill and to build a new school elsewhere. And let us say that you put Turkey Hill out to a developer who proposed to develop affordable housing. You would be able to assist that housing developer with money from this fund.
If you wanted to make it into like a park, you could still use the money from the fund, correct?
Correct.
I thought, I don't know if I'm remembering correctly, but I thought the money, you couldn't just like, oh, we're going to use all of the money towards some, historical building. It had to be spread across all three in some
You have
defined.
some minimum percentages that
Yeah,
have to be spent on each of the elements.
yeah.
I
Okay.
believe it's 10%, and then you can spend the 70% on any one project or spread it across differently. But there is a minimum amount you have to set aside for each of the three elements of the program.
So you can't abandon one of them altogether. You have to do some of all.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
The town of Templeton had an old school, Tony, that they built a new school. That school was surplus, and I think they're giving something on the order of $1.4 million to the developer to help support the affordable housing units in the project.
So, Tony, since we know we have at least two projects related to parks and related to, Ritter and Town Hall that are coming, it's, I think, a good recommendation to have like parks and municipal building design look at this with some real numbers to see if this could be a, you know, a funding source that makes sense.
I agree.
I don't know how the low income housing fits in. I don't know how we'd meet that requirement, but
Normally in combination with a private developer or a nonprofit. I don't know what's in your area, but I'm sure there are area developers that develop community housing.
One thing that would be nice is if we could incentivize the low-income housing coming in, that would get it would make, depending on how much it is, it might make a split tax rate better because you would then have commercial property that would be rental property. So you could make those two things work together.
I would encourage you to use the terms affordable housing and workforce housing and talk about the kinds of people who are, in the workforce. Low income housing will be a trigger for many people because they don't necessarily understand the nuances.
Yeah, I mean, I worked for the public defender for 12 years, and in law school I only did landlord tenant law for people that couldn't afford a lawyer. So I never bothered me, but I hear what you're saying. But I think
so that's probably something to bring to the other committees, and maybe they can have something for annual town meeting.
Yeah. So I put that on the list. I'm happy to share this again to make sure that everybody's seen the last revision. Because of the open meeting law, I can't share this with everybody, right?
You could share it as information as long as we don't deliberate outside of a meeting.
Okay.
We can't. I guess we could share just one-on-one, send comments.
So if we did it like a chain letter from elementary school.
Tony, if you send it to me, I will distribute it to all the committee members as an FYI.
I mean, if there's, mistakes in it or something, or corrections, I think that's fine. But
what's your town email? Comes up as lunenburgschools.net. That's not right.
Whose?
No,
Can I
I'm
send it
on,
to you, Renee, so you can send it to Carter because his thing is not coming up on my.
I also have a Lunenburg email,
I
so I could get.
know.
I
My
think we
email
all
gets
do,
something.
so we could get into the Google Drive. But I
That's correct.
don't use it. Yeah. Um. Here, maybe I can put it in the chat. Hold on a second, Tony. I'll just let me grab it and put it in the chat. Uh, let's see if this will work. Okay. Can you see that in the chat? I put Carter's Lunenburg email, town email, not school. It's C. Terenzini.
Oh, I got it. I got it.
You got it?
Wait,
Okay.
hold on.
Oh, it went to Kate. Wait. How do I do it to all? It won't let me do it to all, only to the host and co-host.
this sounds like a joke of how many high functioning people does it take to send an email?
Oh my God. Between Zoom and Teams and
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, it's
I got it.
okay. Yeah. Okay. Dr. Burnham sent it out. Thank you.
I mean, on this meeting, we can't get the email to work. We have too many
Tony,
HDs on this meeting.
So Tony, is the plan for town meeting just to have a pre? Do you guys are you gonna have a slide or just speak
I think
to
we're
it?
just gonna talk. I mean, I don't want to bore anybody with a slide. And what we're gonna say is pretty fast.
Yeah.
do you want me
Okay.
to print up any copies of it to I haven't been to one of your town meetings, but I'm assuming, and this, you know what happens when one does that, that there's some sort of like entry table with handouts, flyers and such available.
I mean, we could just make it. We could make the little speech the only thing that we present. That's fine.
Well, if you want us to make something up, Tony, just send it along to me and we'll make copies of
All right, I'll send this.
everything.
I mean, we do have to check in, but I think we try to we print out only if we need to. It didn't make it to the
Okay.
printer in time or something.
Just as long as
I hate printing and wasting, you know.
Well, I got to keep my
Paper.
logging friends in business here, you know, or they
Yeah.
won't buy me a beer at the local pub.
you are in New Hampshire, so like, I was stunned the first time I went really far north in New Hampshire, got out of my car to go to court, and I was like, "What is that smell?" And then the people are like, "It's a paper mill." I was like, "Oh, got it." All right. Is there anything else we need to do?
Can we approve minutes, maybe?
Sure. Do we have any?
Oh my God, do we? Dr. Burnham wrote up a ton of them. She's a star.
Go through minutes.
It was like such a relief when I got the email on Sunday.
Hold on. Do we get
One meeting left
One, two.
to do the minutes for, and then we'll have them all. And that one meeting that we're missing still is the 16th of September, but I'm working on that.
Okay. Is that the one with all the reps from the unions?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay. Yeah, that's a long one. Well, you can sum it up by saying very depressing.
super depressing? All right. Let's see. Oh, we got a ton.
Yeah, yeah.
That's great.
Like 7, I think, maybe.
Who did all these, Dr. Burnham?
I did.
Oh my gosh.
See? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Burnham. So do we want to just
Thank you to Renee for doing some edits. That was very helpful. Thank you.
I just made like 3 changes. But I did read them all.
This is the one, I'm reading the one where we found the, where Renee found the money that we still don't know where it went or what it was for.
Oh, I'm afraid that might turn out to be nothing.
It's like the change you find in your couch cushions, except it's $300,000 a year. So do you want to start going through them? On the Budget Task Force meeting minutes for the meeting of July 11th, 2024. Has everybody had a chance to review them?
I've read all of them.
Okay. And is there any objection to the minutes being approved?
In bulk,
Yeah.
I can make a motion to approve them if you want.
I'm at 10/21/2020. Just let me take a look real quick.
Okay.
'Cause I keep notes, so I'm ready. Make a motion, Renee.
Sure. I move we approve the minutes for July 11th, July 22nd, August 19th, September 23rd, September 30th, October 7th, and October 21, all of 2024.
Anyone want a second?
A second.
All right. We have to do a roll call vote because we're right. Is that right, Dr. Burnham?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Renee, how do you vote?
Aye. Aye.
Ezekiel, how do you vote?
Aye.
Carter, how do you vote?
Aye.
Dr. Burnham, how do you vote?
Aye.
And I would also an aye. So the motion carries and all of the meeting minutes have been approved. Thank you to Dr. Burnham and Renee.
No,
Dr.
it's
Burnham.
all Dr. Burnham on this one.
It seems pretty boring, just to say. Yeah. All right. I think that's it. We're done.
All right, so we're
Anything
ready
else?
for next week.
Yeah, I was telling Ezekiel before Carter got on that we've got our song and dance hats ready to redo the Simpsons monorail song at town meeting.
Are we meeting the week after or what? I don't have the meeting, the calendar handy.
Let me see.
Because then, when is Thanksgiving?
I think Thanksgiving's the, is it the 28th, Thanksgiving?
Yeah. Should we meet on the 18th to recap in case? I don't know.
Yeah, we have 18th, and then the
Okay.
2nd is a flex meeting, and then that's it.
Okay.
Well, we have one more after that. We have the 16th.
Okay.
I'm gonna start working on just like a guide to all the material. So there's like one short document, and then I'll just put it in a file and I'll send it to Ezekiel and Carter and Dr. Burnham and Renee, and we can just, give people a guide to where we were when we started and where we are now. And I will try not to make it dire, and I will also not make it a rant against Walmart.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anything else?
I think that's it. Move to adjourn.
I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All
Aye.
right. Thank you.
Good night, folks.
All right. Good night, all. Thank you. Bye.